It's definitely not.
Now we can start. First of all, good morning. It's still morning.
Morning.
We'll start like we always do. First of all, we can quickly go around the room because there are a few new faces here. Is that the way to say it, or a few new people? But after that, because Sandra is the only one with, why doesn't it say Sandy? Who's Sandra? I don't know Sandra.
Now you do.
But we'll quickly go around the room. Shelley, you could start.
Sandra Bondi. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name. Steve, hi. I'm Janie Kuznitsky.
Joan Levin Sachs.
I'm Stan Stoller. I'm Donna Stoller.
And like always, we first of all love questions, and that's the goal here. And so I'm going to start with the Starbucks question, then we're going to get to Stan's question. So you're asking if Starbucks is kosher, and you say it is.
I say the beans are kosher until the bag is opened. Once the beans go into the bin is not kosher.
Why not?
Because it gets contaminated with other beans and with the scoop, which is not kosher. And the pitcher and the milk could be kosher, but the pitcher's not kosher because it's used over and over again. The steam jets on the machine are not kosher. So you can buy what I used to do, because there was a big kosher population where I had a store. I would sell them a 5-pound bag of beans unopened.
To Starbucks?
No, Starbucks. Well,
You buy a bag.
I worked for Gloria Jean's Coffees. And the coffee comes in sealed bags, which are kosher. I know for Gloria Jean's because they were koshered in the.
Okay.
And the kosher people would take home the bag unopened.
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna do a quick run through of a Starbucks coffee, why it could be kosher and not kosher. Okay, here's the short answer. Beans, before you roasted them, are for sure kosher. But the minute a roaster puts it into their roasting oven or whatever they call it, you have a potential now for non-kosher. Why? If they've only roasted beans that were unflavored, that weren't tampered, I don't want to use the word tampered, but touched to add flavors, you're still in a good spot. But what happens if that same roaster is used for beans that people have really adulterated the flavors? Then you have to worry about the actual roaster. Traditionally, though, they don't do that. When you say a coffee has a flavor, it's because it's a natural flavor. So let's say we don't worry about that. When you come into a Starbucks restaurant, I'm calling it a restaurant on purpose for a moment, a Starbucks coffee shop, if you're just doing black coffee, in theory, that the machine only does coffee, you have less to worry about. But if the machine is something that can be taken apart and washed, then you have to figure out how they wash this thing, because when they wash it is where it could get the non-kosher flavors absorbed. So there are a lot of details on how to do it. So there are specific Starbucks products that maybe on ingredients are totally fine, but you have to worry about how they press that coffee or how they brew that coffee. So I'm going to leave it at that. The foods in Starbucks are for sure not kosher. And so therefore their microwaves and all the other products that they're using there are not kosher, unless they brought a third-party product that has a kosher symbol. That's why I never want to answer that question as simply as it sounds. And then like you mentioned, okay, the milks, are they kosher if you're using any additional, like if you're doing a latte, for example, where they've steamed the milk? Well, that steamer, was it only used for milk that was kosher or not? And that's heat. Heat is our biggest enemy in kosher, right? Because that is how you actually transfer flavors. And that's how things can become not kosher that were kosher. So cross-contamination, which is what you mentioned, would happen through heat.
But if the heat's hot enough, it doesn't sterilize it?
Well, so, okay, it's a good question. I'll do a quick koshering run through. To kosher a product means that a product could become not kosher, right? So if a product was used for something that was not kosher, flavor gets absorbed into the walls of that utensil. So let's talk about a pot. It could be a cup. It could be a pan. It could be the oven. Once something that is not kosher has been absorbed into that utensil, The way to kosher it is to unabsorb that flavor. There are a couple ways to do that. The traditional way that you'll find is a rule of thumb. The way it absorbed it is the way to kosher it. It's the way you will unabsorb it. So if it was absorbed through fire, the way to kosher would be through fire. If it was absorbed through water, like boiling, the way to kosher it would be through boiling. The difference, though, is this, and this is why I come back to your point. It requires a 24-hour period between the last time it was absorbed and the next time. And so if I made a coffee and then 3 hours later, I want to kosher that product, I can't. Now, if I use the fire part, I don't have to wait 24 hours. That's the rule of thumb for kosher. Where do we learn that from? Straight out of the Torah. That is, the Jewish people have a war against the nation of Midian, and Moses tells the Jewish people how they can use the spoils. This is where we learn these laws.
What if it's not a what if it's like a stainless steel pitcher, which is not porous?
Well, stainless steel is for sure porous. Meaning stainless steel for sure absorbs. Metal absorbs. What's the proof? Just so I use a non-scientific. If you ever see condensation on the other side, you know that there's some sort of.
Never thought of
But that's so the answer to coffee, like just the general answer is the beans are kosher. If you know that the brewing process didn't have any other factors, the coffee would be fine. Rick, any questions since you're on and you have a speaker this time?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay. All right.
If it has, so many coffees do have flavor.
So you gotta start checking that.
Okay. And they have artificial.
Correct. Artificial is where you really need to check.
But we used to say in our stores that the unflavored beans
Is the kosher
were
beans.
the kosher ones.
Right. I mean, a consumer would have to ask, okay, it's kosher bean, but was the process of the roasting kosher? So I'll give you the example. I happen to like a coffee from Colorado, Denver. And
Redemption?
no, I don't want to give free advertisements. I'm just joking. I'm joking. That was a joke. There's a rabbi that like around Pesach time. So actually around now we'll go and kosher the roaster. And I asked him, I want his run.
Oh, kosher the roaster?
No. It is called, I'm going to remember the name of the roaster of the company and I'll tell you, they have a couple of locations in Denver. Anyway, so the rabbi who goes and koshers the roaster processing machine once told me, he's like, you should just know this thing is always kosher. I do it for Passover, but it's always kosher. They don't do any bean here or any other item that's not kosher. But for Passover, we do an extra process just to make sure. It is, but I happen to like the bean. My brother-in-law from Colombia came for Passover one year, and he liked the bean that he bought some to take back to Colombia, which is says something, right?
Yeah.
Well, the interesting part of what you just said is the top percentage of perfect beans are exported.
Interesting. That is interesting. I like that. Anyway, but that's the idea of the koshering. All right, Stan, you ready for your question? Stan has a table question.
It's not a question, I'm gonna start a discussion. By the way, the best coffee I have ever had, back home, one of my coffee shop members gave us a gift certificate.
Where's home? Where's home?
Bethesda, Maryland.
Woo, okay.
And she gave us a gift certificate to the Hermosa Inn.
Here,
Yeah.
at 32nd Street, if you don't know where 32nd and Lincoln about.
I just had lunch there.
They had the best coffee I have ever tasted.
Really?
It was just amazing. Well,
That's good to know.
that aside,
Quick interruption, Kaladi Roasters, I just remembered the name. Kaladi, Kaladi in Denver. All right, go for it.
Rabbi and I talking the previous hour about this subject. What is more important in marriage? That the partners be of the same religion, or that they have a successful marriage? And don't go away from here saying that Stan came today to recommend intermarriage. I'm not at all. But what is more important, the divorce rate in America is 50%. So whoever is setting up these things is not doing things well. So what is more important to in the couple? That they be Jewish or that they have a successful marriage?
Both.
Both.
Can it be both?
Yeah, that's, we're striving for both. What I'm saying is, what if someone, a Jewish man, falls in love with a non-Jewish woman? And people fight them that they shouldn't get married. But what is more important in the match? Successful marriage, the same religion.
Brother, I want to add a layer to your question.
And if the batting average is 50%, it really can be neither. We have to strive that these people are the character that is going to make a great marriage.
So I want to add a layer to your question because I know some families here at the table in the sense of whether they have a child who's, let's say, married currently to someone who isn't Jewish. So the question that I'm going on this and with the additional layer is, would you or did you push against the marriage, or did you come up with the premise they're happy?
Yeah, but
I'm not talking about where there was a conversion. I'm talking about where they kept their faith or lack thereof of becoming Jewish.
there's a caveat to that.
Let's hear it.
Number one, I know someone who married,
That's why I'm adding layers here.
who married someone who was not Jewish. The spouse did not convert, but accepts all of the Jewish tradition, so that they have a Jewish home, in quotes. They host a Seder, they do everything that they're supposed to do. And it's a blissfully happy marriage, I think.
So is that another layer
That's
to
a
the
layer.
point?
It depends on the partner and how the partner is willing to accept the differences.
Okay, we're going around the room on this before I share some extra thoughts.
My youngest son married a woman who was not Jewish, did not convert. They've been married 30 years.
Wow.
No religion, except they do have a Christmas tree. But the
Do they
kids,
have a Hanukkah menorah?
yeah, right.
No?
No,
Okay, I gotta know, that's why I'm asking. These are
No.
important parts of the question.
no, there's no religion, but.
But they have a Christmas tree.
But they have-
So there is
So
religion.
there's religion.
Although the United States said a Christmas tree is not religious, but we all know the truth.
The kids never went to church or Sunday school or bar mitzvah, nothing. The kids had nothing. The kids are adults now. But I will tell you a true story that happened over 20 years ago. We were sitting around, my husband and I, and my son and his wife. Don't ask me how we started talking about latkes, but we did. And my son turned to his wife and said, Nancy, we should make some latkes. We haven't had them for a while. And she said, I am no stinking Jew.
You said what?
I am no stinking Jew.
Whoa.
In front of my husband and me, and what I wanted.
Wait, your son's reaction was?
Well, first of all, I am so proud I didn't say anything, but what I wanted to say was, you aren't, but you get in bed every night with one who is, and your kids are half. My son turned to her and all he said, it was like if you were talking to a child. He just said, Nancy, like you would do to a kid, and that's all. And I've never said a word to her since.
So in private, do you know if they had a conversation?
Yeah, we really, it sort of.
That create a real wedge.
Yes, and then when my husband was dying, my son came, I did not call him. Probably my other son told him, Dad's really bad. And he came and he was, really good. And I have more of a relationship with him now. It's not great, but it's better. but I don't talk to her. I have not, she's never been to our house in 20 years, nothing.
Wow.
And you never discussed with your son what his feelings were?
I'm not bringing him. He's married to her, he lives with her, and obviously he must be happy they've been married for 31 years.
Wow.
The kids, if my grandsons walked in the room now, they wouldn't know me.
Oh,
Anyone else want to share thoughts on this? Not necessarily on that additional detail, but hey, yes, Shelley.
It's Rochelle.
I went from Shelley to Rochelle.
That, actually, my real name is
Hey,
Rochelle.
Call me Shelley. This is gonna be a little difficult. My brother and sister-in-law live in Florida. And they have 2 grown children and grandchildren. My brother and my sister-in-law met when they were 19 years old. She's Italian. Okay, of course, my brother is Jewish. My brother went to Hebrew school. My sister-in-law chased my brother. And I'll be honest with you, his life would have been a lot different if she would have allowed him to finish his education, but they didn't. Okay, they got married and I came so close to bringing the picture of my whole family. And I couldn't find where it was. Anyway, in September, they'll be married 50 years. They got married when he was really young. To this day, I will still tell my sister, will say to my sister-in-law, that my parents would be very proud of you. You raised 2 children and you raised my brother. And she did, and they get along. I mean, just listening to the conversation between the 2 of them, how much the love they still have for each other and are so, and so much together. I, on the other hand, been divorced for 38 years. And I look at my brother and so happy that they are together, that they're together and raise their children. Of course, when I was at their home and I walk into the home and see that my mother's dining room set with pictures overhead, it's ready to kill me, but they're happy together, and I know my parents would be very happy with how this turned out.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add? Did you want to add anything, Sandy?
I have 2, my boys went to a Jewish day school. And 2 out of 3 married, well, the 3rd isn't married, 2 out of 3 married non-Jewish women. One of them, the one in Colorado, they just looked it up, the coffee place. She will try. It's weird that my son doesn't. He's the only one who has a real connection to Israel with this anti-Semitism. It bothers him. I mean, emotionally, he is just sad. He's really devastated. And yet she'll make chicken soup. They live in Colorado, so they will call and FaceTime me and light candles with me at least 2 of the times. My daughter-in-law takes it out. She makes sure she has candles. She has made a challah. I mean, she tries. And he just doesn't even encourage it. And my granddaughter will wear, the top is Christmas pajamas, the bottom is Hanukkah. She says to me, Bubby, I'm both. I'm Jewish. And they happen to be more, the girls embrace Judaism more, and sadly we're not close by, but they do have some Jewish friends. And anyway, so that's that one. The one here is a doctor, so she works with lots of Jewish doctors, and she tells me whenever there's a Christian holiday, she has to, a Jewish holiday, sorry, she has to work. They ask her to. She once told my granddaughter, your Bubby is Jewish, but you're not. And I try my.
So wait, is that a daughter-in-law?
Yes, daughter-in-law. I have 3 sons, sorry. Yeah, so that's the one here. But she does try a little bit. I don't know why she's so intimidated. What is that? PF. the one that you get free books, I had them
Oh,
sent to my
PJ Library.
house. The PJ Library, and I had them sent to her house. She lives just 10 minutes from me. She's in Greylawn. And she hands me the books and she says, you read them. I said, they're books. You'll learn something. I mean, they're not heavy books. Did you ever read them? There's nothing in
Right.
there really. And, but it's not worth pushing. And you know what? She does make comments.
So you see the difference between the two. That's the,
I do, but I'm here with this one and I can't have a conversation with her. And I can't say, and we would just.
I was, yeah.
We were just invited to, we were at I was at Bethel for Tu B'Shvat Seder, and my cousin, he's a distant cousin, invited me to his daughter's bat mitzvah. It's a b'nai mitzvah with the brother and sister, which is in March, and I told my granddaughter, we're going to a party, we'll get dressed up, and she's excited, and, you know.
Nice.
I said, remember the Jewish star earrings, we'll give her that, something else, and so I just have to make sure it's on my daughter-in-law's calendar and my son, but again, he doesn't,
Right.
this one too, doesn't really.
I was never comfortable dating a non-Jewish man.
Just because of how your parents raised you, or?
Yes, and it just was not anything I could do, is to date a non-Jewish man. I just was not comfortable. I did once and I was very uncomfortable for a short time. Just,
Did religion come up in the conversation?
no, I only maybe went out with him 1 or 2 times. No, it just wasn't right for me.
Right. I will go back to the statistics thing. We were looking at the statistics. Before I go on it, did anyone else want to add?
You have something?
Or did you want to add, Donna? We didn't even ask you over there. Right. Yeah, I looked it up after Stan asked earlier while we were sitting together. So 50% is, or just under, I was looking at, is the United States average. Jewish divorce rate is less. And then when you start talking about more on a religious standpoint, this is what we got into also on a side note. It's like 10%. Rising, but 10%. Now, is that because they're all happily married, which was what the question was about? Or is it something that's very frowned upon in these tighter, more insular communities? Well, the interesting information that adds to that point is that 50% of divorces in the Orthodox community, at least according to the data that we were reading, are contentious divorces, which means it usually leads you to think that there are probably more issues, and these are the 10 that actually pulled the plug. But what I would answer just before even touching the statistics, there's 2 parts to this question. Number one, it's a very emotional question for many people. So like you have to kind of, when you ask questions, you kind of have to move the emotions out first for the answer, and then you can bring emotions back in. And so on a short answer, the answer is obviously Judaism specifically says to marry someone of your own faith. And then we could talk about the why. One of the big things is, will that marriage lead your children away from the faith? That's really what, if you look at the Torah's wording, it actually addresses that point. And so, like when you answer, you can always find the anomalies. We'd have to look at the larger data, and I didn't pull that up together with you. Like how many of those marriages end in a divorce? How many of them, bless you?
You scared it away.
Yes.
Look. No.
But on that note, the question is also one of the biggest things that I think you kind of brought it up. It's been up to a degree in the conversation. It's like, okay, how are these children being raised? Are they being raised with 2 religions? Does that become contentious between the spouses? I mean, I could of course share that the most important thing to answer the question when you ask it to me is, the most important thing is that you have a partner of your faith. And they're not mutually exclusive. You shouldn't be in a bad marriage. Judaism says there is a mitzvah to divorce your spouse if the marriage isn't doing well. It's a mitzvah, it's not a suggestion. Unlike other religions that say divorce is the worst thing, you have to have, you have to almost make it as if you were never married. We don't say that. So that's why I say it's not a mutually exclusive thing. The answer is you should be in a Jewish marriage and be happy. And if you're not happy, get out of the marriage. That's for sure. Like I know we all know people who are still in a marriage for their children, and that hurts. Like, don't think your children don't realize that.
Go ahead, Jane, go ahead.
There needs to be a conversation before a commitment is made.
Right.
And if we were getting married and I was not Jewish and you asked me to commit to raising our children being Jewish, see, that's my thing. I really want to be married to you.
Right.
Don't tell honey. Would you commit to raising your children Jewish and to have a Jewish home? Sometimes you can think like a Jew and not be converted, and I don't mean that in a negative
Right. I
way.
know. I see what you're saying.
I mean, that's what I see with Jimmy.
I will share, and this came up when Stan told me he has a question for discussion today, and I told him when I walked into this building, I was on the phone for a 25-minute phone call that's going to continue in the afternoon, really about this specific question, not knowing what his question was going to be about. The goal is that, and this I share as an important part of this question, right? You can ask me all day long, and I'm going to say Jewish marriage 100%. That's not to say that you look down at people who have chosen a different path, right? That's 100% additional and important to keep that in mind. And it's the same thing with anything of people who have different principles than you. Does that mean you shut them out of your life? Or do you maintain a healthy relationship, respect people as individuals? And no, and here's where I come back to this. There's a rabbi from Australia. I've shared this at these discussions, but I shared it on the phone today. It was always a profound way of looking and perspective on these types of questions, because they come up often in Jewish circles, either in people's families or they come up from friendships. And so this rabbi in Australia is asked a question by a mother of a child who married someone out of the faith. And so she is kind of asking, should she disconnect from her daughter? How she's ripping apart the future of Judaism, blah, blah, blah. And so, it was very strongly worded in the question. And the rabbi's answer, which I quote quite often, and I love it, was that there are 613 commandments. There's another 612 for your daughter to do. Focus on the 612, right? It takes a lot of perspective to say that, but that's how important it is, right? We're not here to change people. We can't change people. People have to grow and make decisions, healthy decisions, not just in religion, but in life. And so our job is to help people grow, whether it's a family member or a rabbi, not to look down upon people. And so I remember, like, for some reason, when the Supreme Court decision about marriage equality was announced, I think it was like a Friday or something, or Thursday, whatever it was. I don't know why I was chosen to speak that week at Shoal, but obviously you talk about current events to a degree. And so I shared that, like, I'm not here to tell somebody what's a right marriage or wrong marriage. I mean, I could, of course I could, especially when asked. But what I can tell you is that you have to, they said love wins. That was the line. Love has to win from me and from each of us, that we don't judge people. We respect them. We maintain a relationship. You don't have to agree on it. If we agreed on everything, we'd have a very boring world. Right? The goal is to grow through things. You don't have to approve of everything I do. I don't have to approve of everything you do, but I do have to respect you, and I still have to love you. And that's what the Torah says. The Torah says that even there are two teachings when it talks about sin that I think are foundational. Number one is the Torah says, or it's in the Talmud, Afal pi shechata Yisrael. Even though he sinned, he's still a Jew. You are not defined by the actions that are not approved by the Torah, for example, by God. The sin is the problem, not the person. And in that same notion, that same point, it says, hate the sin, not the sinner.
Yes.
Right? These are very important details to keep in mind in this conversation, because You are going to find people, I mean, I don't have to educate you on this. You probably know it from growing up in America, that you know somebody who sat Shiva, or you heard of somebody who sat Shiva when their child or somebody married out of the faith. And maybe that worked then. I don't know that it worked. I'm saying maybe that was what was needed to be done then. But what's better in that sense? To tell somebody how wrong they are, and there's a time for everything, or to lose the relationship forever because they made a wrong choice. So I'm not mixing in dynamics where you say, okay, the oldest sibling marries out of faith, and you're afraid that's going to give the wrong impression to the younger siblings, and now you have to keep them out of the house. I'm not going into those conversations, right? Those are how people think. My point is that no one has to approve anything. The goal is that if someone made that choice and they came to you out of love and asked you for advice, that's your opportunity to talk to somebody. But another teaching I think that's important in this is there is a teaching that says that you should rebuke your friend. Hocheach, tochiach, this is from the Torah, not commentary. Hocheach, tochiach et amitecha. You should rebuke your friend. When they're doing something wrong, you should tell them off. The Torah uses the word friend. And so there is a commentary that highlights that word and says, if they are not your friends, your rebuke is not only not going to help, it's going to make it worse. And so a true friend doesn't look at criticism as criticism, they look at it as love. But if you're not a true friend, if it didn't come from your heart, it's not going to enter their heart. And so when you talk about these conversations, there are so many layers to it. I would never answer that it's a good thing, or right now, the question is answer the person, not the question. If you ask me on a simple black and white, what's the law? The Torah tells us the law. If you ask about healthy marriages, the answer is your marriage should be very happy, right? But it shouldn't be a mutually exclusive happy or. If you're married, you should be in a happy marriage. And if your marriage is not happy, the Torah tells us what to do. It's a mitzvah to divorce. And so I know that there's a lot of emotions in the question. So that's kind of why I don't necessarily try to answer this question. I mean, we could look at the Torah. The Torah tells us how to live. But our goal for sure is to not judge somebody. Our goal is to embrace them for who they are. Because in life, we have a lot of challenges. And our goal is to always grow and be a better human being, more positive effect on this world. And who knows how people's paths grow. Now, if you ask, I will share a story that I always loved. This is a story of the Rebbe's. Like, you wonder if somebody went over to a holy individual and said, hey, I'm about to marry a non-Jew. How would he answer? Right? Most people would assume his answer is going to be, you're crazy. How could you do it? You're desecrating Judaism, the future, it's its own Holocaust, all the words that you probably have all heard in these conversations. His answer was not that. A person came by the Rebbe and basically the story happens actually in Belgium. Tells his rabbi, he's marrying a non-Jewish girl. They have a lot of conversations about this. And the rabbi is not successful in changing his mind. In their conversation, he says, by the way, I'm going to Brooklyn for something. He says, you know what, go by the Rebbe and tell him, which is gutsy in its own right, right? And so the Rebbe told him something quite profound. He answers him, I am jealous of you. It's like, what do you mean you're jealous of me? He says, you have a challenge that I never have and never will have. Right? We have to understand each of us are different people. And so what was a challenge for one person, finding a Jewish significant other, for somebody else, they had it immediately. And they didn't go through the whole dating scene for 20 years and they finally find someone that they think they love and want to be with forever. So he said, you're coming to me. I don't have that challenge, but I envy you that you have such a challenge. Right? Because God puts us on this world with a lot of challenges. And the goal is to always win these challenges and that we have the strength. But it's not for me to judge somebody because those are difficult things. Who knows what this person's going through? So when I talk about the phone call from this morning, it's a brother with his subjective opinion on it. And he's looking at it from a very narrow perspective. The Torah says this is not allowed. His brother's almost up to that point already. So where do you come in now? Do you tell him how terrible he is and how he's, the Torah says not to and blah, blah, blah? Or should there be another approach? That's kind of the conversation. I don't tell him what to do. I can talk with him some ideas and give him some perspective. But that's the idea of this same conversation. Like, emotional questions have to be answered to the individual. So that's its own Jewish teaching as well, right? Don't answer the question, answer the person. If you've heard that line, that's preachable. Like, that's very important. Is your answer going to help, or were they really asking you something else? And so in your question, there's parts to this that are the simple, what's the answer? And there's a part, okay, what's behind, or what's the deeper question within that? And if I just said, oh no, marriage is this way, it's no other way, I might not have answered your question, because your question was bigger than that. Yeah.
So, the interesting thing is that the person who was going to marry the non-Jew went to the rabbi, right?
In my story?
Yes.
In that story from the Rebbe, yes.
Okay. So,
Which means he already has a struggle.
yes. And that's what I was going to say.
Right.
He's actually questioning himself.
Right.
And in that case, I have learned at some point, paraphrasing, so that because he just needs a sounding board and.
Right there. And by the way, if we're being very honest today, there are many people in the world who have lesser education in the Jewish ways than what we have from our own upbringing. And so when you start questioning someone who's in that situation, they never had this education, or they didn't live that way in their family, it's very easy to tell somebody, drop the girl or drop the guy, but we don't know what's leading to that. And to educate them now at this intersection in life and say, oh, Judaism is so important, that's also difficult. And so that's why I say you can't judge. You have to go into this with a great understanding, with a lot of heart and love. And whatever happens in the end, don't drop a relationship. That doesn't make any sense, right? The goal is like we said, there are 612 other commandments. Let's focus on what we can do. And I think that's important. Are there people who don't like that answer? I'm sure we can find, that's what I was telling Stan, this guy who's asking me the question, depending on which rabbi he goes to, he can get the answer he wants. So I don't know what answer he wants. That's what we were trying to figure out. Maybe he wants to stay as strong-willed as he is in this conversation right now with his brother. Maybe he wants someone to just say, yeah, you're doing the right thing, keep it up. That's it. I can find a rabbi.
Maybe eventually she'll embrace Judaism.
Right. Maybe she's already on that path. But again, to be honest, that doesn't change the fact that at the present moment, if you ask the brother, for example,
Yeah.
the marriage is not a kosher marriage.
Right.
So he's not looking at the future.
Right. He's upset.
He's right now.
The brother.
Right, brother. So that's why I understand where he comes from. The question is that helping his brother? Is that helping the relationship? Is it going to change his brother's mind if he remains angry for the rest of his life? He has no say in his brother's final decision. So, but I'm not giving him an answer, because I understand this is a very nuanced question. He could be that, just to play it out, if you want to talk future, how this looks up, he could play it out that he disapproves, doesn't show up to the wedding, never talks to the fiance, and loses his relationship with his brother. And maybe he'll always have a text or a religious leaning that he can point to and said, that's wrong, and I therefore stood my ground. I need my children to know that. We can find that on paper. I can find those texts for him. And then on the other side, you could play it differently and say, no, maybe your love and relationship will help them grow. And I can see it that way. But that doesn't make this way right or that way right. He has to speak to a rabbi who deals specifically with these questions, who can say, this is what you have to do, not me. I'm not that type of a rabbi. I can be a soundboard, but we have to connect him to somebody who understands the big picture of life today in the United States, the Jewish world, the Torah as well, right? We cannot water down the Torah. That's the most important thing. And this is why when Stan asks the question, you can't say, therefore the marriage is right because they're happy. Because that means I'm taking something from the Torah and saying it doesn't apply. Like that, I do have an allergy to. Right? Our job is not to lower the standard. It's to say, this is the standard, we're growing, rather than here's the standard because we're at this level, right? We have to always want to grow. And so it's like such a dangerous position to be put into, to say, yes or no, this is not, you got to answer. It's like, well, and I mean, there's a yes or no part to this, but that's not what the question was about.
It was interesting that you just said that's where the rabbi is this minute, not looking, the brother, I'm sorry, not looking to the future. When Kim and Jim got married, his children were not Jewish. They sent the oldest daughter at her request to Israel on a group.
Right, church or something.
Yeah. And she is contemplating converting. She will probably convert. So a little bit of education led to a lot more education, which was a very significant thing. So you never know what's going to happen.
I will end off on one thought, and then if there's another question that is a different subject that I always love, and I hear this here all the time. I think I've heard it from you, and I hear it from a lot of people, and that is that they say, my X, Y, and Z daughter-in-law or son-in-law, she converted, and she's more Jewish than many of my Jewish friends, and what they mean is they're more active, they participate in the temple or synagogue, blah, blah, blah. There is a text that I read that I always loved that answers this specific quote. I only read it last year. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like gold. There is a text somewhere. I'm not sure if it's in the Talmud or a commentary, but I can find it. And I know where I have it on paper. And the quote goes something like this. In Judaism, we don't proselytize. It's against our religion to proselytize. And the question is why? So the short answer that most people will give is, you do not need to be Jewish to go to heaven. That's not how our religion says. One God for all people, and there are different ways of worship. For Jews, we do it this way. For others, we do it that way. You don't have to become us. And so that's the first answer that most people give, why we don't proselytize, because that's a fundamental idea. But there was another answer that said that if you proselytize, you actually can get punished. Like there's a spiritual punishment for a person who proselytizes. And so the question is why? It's one thing to say we don't do it, but why should you be punished if you do it? And so the answer that this commentary gives is that when you proselytize and you're going to get converts, that's what happens. You make Jewish people look bad. How do you make Jews look bad? Because the fact is that a lot of people who convert are all in. And there are a lot of Jews who are born and are not all in. And so it makes the naturally born Jew look bad. And God sees that and says, my own people are not all in, but this person who chose it is more in than my own children who were born Jewish. And so it makes the Jews look bad. And so whenever I hear the comments since then, it's like it brought a whole new, people were saying it as a positive about their daughter-in-law or son-in-law, whoever they were talking about. And the truth is, it makes us look bad. Why aren't we so engaged?
It's apples and oranges.
It's a point that I just thought was important. You checked some more data?
Yeah, this is from the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. One academic study, often cited in community research, found that the divorce rate for first marriages where both spouses are Jewish was about 17%, whereas the divorce rate for intermarried couples was about 32%.
Oh, we did want to know about this, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We were asking at the table to find out. So it is higher. Double. And part of that, obviously, when we know, I was sharing with someone, they asked about, okay, Connie and I, how'd you date? Were you set up? Who? So I always explain, we weren't set up to marriage. We were set up to date, right? That's normal. Someone said, you and her could get along. We think you'd be a good match, right? And then you go date and figure it out. What did they do? All they did was they said, your values align with her values. We know her, we know the family. Now go figure out if you like each other. Right? So there's already a massive part of conversation, or a massive part of what marriage is all about has already been addressed. your values align. So those questions don't really come up in the dating because you've already figured that part out. Whereas when you talk about two people, even of the same faith, who don't know each other, they met at a bar or at an event, they're navigating, okay, what are your values? What are mine? And we can see that in a lot of Jewish relationships, like, oh, they went conservative, they went reform, whatever, or Orthodox and conservative, or whatever it was, they're figuring out what's important to them. And they have to navigate it together. And then when you do it with somebody who isn't Jewish, now you're talking like we just talked about. It's like, wait, what are we doing about Christmas? You always grow up, what are we doing about Hanukkah, Purim? And now you have more issues. And they really do come up a lot, as we're hearing. So those are like, that would also tend to be a reason why marriages start to have fissures. And it's like, wait a second, there's a crack here. And then they get larger and larger when someone makes a comment like that, or could get larger and larger. And so hurtful things come out about that. There are a lot of prejudices that people don't even realize they have. And these things definitely are the reason why you'd see a double pretty high. Rick, did you have anything to add on this?
No, I did not. I'm just listening, and I appreciate all the different viewpoints as
So the
well,
mic is
too.
working. The mic
What?
is working for you?
Yeah,
The mic, okay, good.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna try to keep bringing it for you. Any
Thank you.
any other subjects? Did you have a subject you want to bring up?
Nope.
Any other subjects? Sure.
All this, I should buy Yitro, got the 10 commandments. And then Mishpatim, like the first verse of Mishpatim is, slaves that didn't just serve. I'm just wondering if I was one of the people that left Israel, that left Egypt and spent the next 6 weeks, whatever, to get to.
Yeah.
And you got these 10 proclamations. Well, yeah, that's good reason. Well, how long do they wait till they hit them with all those the next?
Okay, I'll answer. Okay, so to repeat the question, Jewish people leave Egypt, and we always talk about the 10 commandments. They're given 49 days later, so 7 weeks. And then you look at the next Torah portion, and it's almost the rest of the commandments. A lot of commandments are in the next Torah portion of Mishpatim, which is going to be read this Saturday in Shul. And so the question is like, how much later did those laws come? Like maybe when the Jews hear that, like, forget it, we don't want this book anymore. Those 10 were easy. The short answer, actually, if you look at the first commentary on that verse, of the first verse of this Torah portion, so it says, Ve'ele hamishpatim. The vav in front of a word in Hebrew means and. So the translation is, and these are the laws. And the commentary right there says these laws were given at Sinai as well. So to answer your question, it wasn't a day later, it was right away. And there's a lot of Torah law there. I mean, think about it. Which parts of those laws are the ones that, like the slavery one, that probably are like, wait, we were slaves. We appreciate that there are rules that you shouldn't be mistreated, etc. if you're starting with those. But the answer is they were given at Sinai. That's one of a lot of people don't know that part. It's like, wait, we were only given 10 commandments at Sinai. It's like, no, all laws were given at Sinai.
Wow, that's a great question.
It takes a long time to give all those laws.
Maimonides, by the way, talks about this. He talks about how the process of the giving of the Torah was, because Moses at Sinai, if you actually look at the 10 commandments, the first 2 are from God. And then the Jews say that's a little too much for us. Not because of the law, but because they couldn't spiritually maintain themselves while God revealed himself. So the next 8 are Moses spoken to the Jewish people. God to Moses, Moses to the Jewish people. So there is a lot of laws that were given at Sinai.
So theoretically, how long did it take to give the rest of the laws? I mean, were they
I've
there
never
for
read
another
anything like
100
that.
years?
No, so what if you actually, something interesting. Jethro comes to the Jewish people after the 10 commandments are given, but when you read it in the Torah portion, he comes before. So the order of what comes first and afterwards in the Torah it's many times the commentaries talk about it, and they say there is no chronological order in the Torah. So that's important to know. Because only after the revelation at Sinai does Moses' father-in-law, because he heard the miracle, and then he came. And Moses, he sees Moses, this is his biggest addition to what he does, is Moses all day long is sitting there answering questions. People are asking, how do you do it? How do you apply it? Practical questions. And Moses is tired. Day in, day out, he sits there and answers questions. He has no break. And so because of that, Jethro, is observing this, and he tells Moses, like, maybe you need to set up a system, a pyramid. You're at the top, but have people answer the questions that are more easily answerable by scholars that are not as great as you. I call it the tech support, it's tech support. It's elevated to tier 2, elevated to tier 3, until a question is not answerable by those. They don't know the answer. Okay, Moses will get it. So he adds that. But why couldn't Moses figure that out on his own? He could have. He had a different perspective of how to help the Jews, or maybe of how he looked at the Jews. And Jethro said, no, you got to do it this way. That's for a lot of other commentary. But I'm just saying, coming back to that, they were already given all the mitzvah, which is why they had so many questions. It's like, wait, what do I do here? How do I do that? This isn't kosher. Those questions started coming up, and the only person who was answering it was Moses, until that system was established.
He didn't know the word relegate.
Correct.
You didn't know the word what?
Relegate.
Relegate.
Right, he had to give it over to others. But yeah, that's the idea. And there are a lot of commentaries. He thought that he could sort of spiritually uplift people by being in. There are a lot of commentaries on why Moses, no, not with ego, meaning Moses was the great Moses. So by his having that relationship, he was hoping it would the spiritual idea of the Jewish people as well would be uplifted through that connection and relationship. Oh yeah, it's a very good question, because there are a lot of commandments. And I like the second question, which I think maybe one of you, like, how long did it take to do that? I don't know. Like, we don't necessarily, I haven't seen a text that says how many days or how many hours. Because even the oral tradition, which was given at Sinai as well. Okay, now we're talking about a lot more details than just the law. Is definitely at Sinai for Moses, with a process of how he gives it over and how the next person who gives it over. Like, there's a lot to this. So I've never really looked at the hours or days part on that. That's a good question.
Can't be hours.
I don't know, revelation. If it's a revelation type of a thing, it's that. You know what I mean?
But that's a lot of revelation.
I know. I'm just saying, like, I've never looked into that part, but I actually will. It's an interesting.
Personal question.
Yes.
How fast can you revelate?
Still working on speed. Still working on my speed. I do a lot of, running to get that. Now, you know what I mean by that is think about how our brain works. I think is a good example. You have a flash moment where something comes into your mind, but then it takes time as we kind of extrapolate that idea, where it finally becomes something that I can give over or feel. So there is this idea of receiving something in a moment. So the way our mind processes is after that flash. So that's why I don't know, like, we'd have to look into how that worked at Sinai.
Just want to reiterate, make sure I heard it correctly. So your idea was, or your question was, we got all 613 at the same time, but only 10 were announced?
So the 10 were the featured commandments. These are the 10 commandments that, were essential, foundational, but all 613, which 10 of those are part of those, right? So the rest, the 603 remaining ones were also given at Sinai. And that's what that commentary from that Vav. And to tell me that they are part of the first 10. But the tablets were obviously very important, foundational. The rest are also, like, one thing I've always learned is it's not for us to decide if a mitzvah is more important than the other. But God said these 10 are on a pedestal.
That's what I was going to say. God chose those 10.
That's why, like, I always love this question. It's one of these questions that was posed to a rabbi. European times when Jews would be thrown into dungeons by pirates or landowners, and a man is in prison, and the pirates or whoever the person who threw him in, the landowner says, "I'll give you 1 day a year, you can come out." And so he writes to the rabbi, "Which day should I choose? Should I choose Yom Kippur so I could be with a minyan on Yom Kippur? Should I choose Pesach so I could be at a Seder? Like, which one is the right one?" Because there's different mitzvot. And so the rabbi writes back to him and he says, "You should go out tomorrow. Don't wait to do a mitzvah in 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 weeks. Tomorrow, the mitzvah that you can do tomorrow is important. Seize the opportunity."
Like that.
And that's kind of like how I look at it. It's like, you have an opportunity right now. Why are you waiting for the next bigger one? Right now, you can do a mitzvah. And that tells us again the value of each mitzvah, how important. One mitzvah has tremendous value. The mitzvah itself, not the reward. The mitzvah itself, that mitzvah connects you to God. That value is priceless. And so seize that opportunity right now. Don't wait till Passover. Yeah, Passover is a very fundamental, foundational Jewish celebration. But that's another thing, right? He didn't write that in the answer. He might have. I have to read the letter again. Did he say you just don't know your time on earth? I don't remember him using that, but I think his point more was about the value of the right now. Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is that part to what you just said, right? Kind of, it comes up in a lot of things. The person says, "I'm going to have a family 10 years, my career path, whatever." Well, you don't know what's going to happen in 10 years in multiple ways. You don't know what your body's going to be doing. You don't know. That's always like the response that you'll get from somebody who says, "No, you should probably try already." And we all know why people are pushing it off for careers. No one's going to not understand that. But there's a lot more parts to that conversation, which is why some of the larger companies offer the infertility treatments for free, because they know that people are pushing off childbirth and pregnancy so that they could advance their careers. And it's like, well, you know what? We're going to help you. But sometimes you do those stuff and God's not in a giving mood at the moment. Is that a way of saying that?
I was gonna say that was interesting.
Well, that's really what it is. Like, in the end of the day, to create a child, you need God. You could try all day in the lab, but there's still a third partner. Or maybe we should say a fourth partner, right? Because the doctor's already the third partner. But I'm saying, like, there's more than there's still a God aspect to childbirth. And so.
See, champagne was my third person because I couldn't get pregnant.
And then you drank and you got pregnant.
And I was at the doctor's office New Year's Eve day. And he sat down and wrote a prescription. And the prescription was drink 1 bottle of champagne tonight.
Fun, right?
Cute.
That's probably, that's funny.
Nice.
So yeah, you know what that means. Like, just stop working so hard on trying. Stop being stressed.
But that was a
Right.
very just
Right.
human.
Yeah,
rather
no, I totally get it.
Just relax and enjoy.
He didn't tell you to go on an international trip. He's like,
And you got pregnant.
I did. Debbie was born 9 months later.
wow,
Oh, I got pregnant for years.
from champagne.
Oh, you didn't have.
Just want to know if everyone got the same instructions over here. But any last minute thoughts or things to bring up?
I love this class.
You have to come up with the next question.
I'm sorry,
I said you have to come up with the next question for next.
the first one.
That's true. More about Starbucks.
Oh, yeah, now
I will tell you, just to end up on the Starbucks thing, my dad has a problem with Starbucks specifically. I don't know that I'm not putting my own opinion on this. I'm just sharing his opinion. That the minute a coffee shop becomes a restaurant, should somebody who keeps kosher walk into that coffee shop? And so his opinion
That's
is like,
interesting.
meaning going back to what we were talking about, McDonald's is not a kosher restaurant. So if I walked in there for a coffee, there are going to be people who say, hey, people might look at you and think that you're eating there, not really understanding. And then they can make the leap. I call it a leap on purpose. that McDonald's is kosher, right? Because the rabbi just walked out of a McDonald's. And so they're very careful about perception. So if people start thinking Starbucks is a restaurant, not a coffee shop, you would have to worry about the same thing. So my dad his opinion is that Starbucks is a restaurant and therefore you shouldn't be servicing a Starbucks. Again, I'm not sharing any more than that opinion just to give you the perspective of it. So it's not even about kosher anymore, right? It's not even about the Starbucks coffee being kosher. It's like, wait, they're selling foods there. How do people view it? So drinking coffee from 7-Eleven doesn't have that problem. Just using that as the example. But it's just another aspect to add to this.
Why, from 7-Eleven, they don't have that problem? Why?
7-Eleven is a convenience store. So no one accuses you of going into a restaurant.
Those beans are kosher.
7-Eleven coffee probably is kosher. I'm just putting it out there.
Well, we used to put a kosher certificate.
Oh, really? On
Oh,
the,
absolutely, because it was an observant community.
so there was, just to give, you're mentioning a really interesting point. There is a restaurant that, it's actually a number of restaurants called Modern Bagel. It's owned by a Jewish woman who is celiac. And so the restaurant is all gluten-free. I think she's celiac. Well, either way, it's a gluten-free restaurant. They have a kosher one. Now, their other ones are kosher, but they're not necessarily certified. They might be open on Shabbat. A couple of reasons why many kosher consumers wouldn't frequent it. But the one that's kosher is in like Teaneck, New Jersey, religious community, or more religious community, more kosher consuming. And so instead of using the word Modern Bagel on their restaurant, they called it something else and they wrote in small letters, by Modern Bagel. Why did they do that? Because the kosher supervising agency of Teaneck said, we don't want it to have the same name, because if you go here and then you might think that when you're in Manhattan, I could go there too. And so you need to have some sort of an identifier that says this is not the same, so people don't make that mistake. So we're always concerned about that in Jewish law.
Yeah, but with what you just said, Starbucks is open on Shabbat.
You know, it's not owned by a Jew, let's say. It's owned by
Well, it was Howard Ziegel.
Schultz.
So
Yeah, but it was publicly owned.
Howard
He was
Ziegel
the
is great.
CEO. Yeah, he was the chairman. But again, that would be another conversation. I mean, that could be another issue, but not to add that. But that's the idea. Like, is this a restaurant or is this a coffee shop? Again, I don't share my opinion on that. I will end the Zoom on that note. I just wanted to add the idea.
You're never going to tell me if you drink a Starbucks coffee.
Let me just sign off on the Zoom. You can totally follow.
No.